Hello and welcome to the Creators Guild. I'm Chris Howell and with me,
Jared Lovelady.
and we are here to talk about all things creative. And the name of our show is not the Creators Guild Outlet, just so you know. We had a little blooper where I'm like, what are we talking about here? Oh well. Brain glitches in the matrix happen. They happen sometimes. And then we start over. Luckily, it happens at the beginning. Oh well. Someday this will be live, and then anything we say that's wrong, everybody will get to see it.
Just out there.
Yeah. So today we're going to start, as always, we're going to read another chapter in A Flight from Shadows. And this is once again your reminder that if you haven't gone out and gotten your copy of A Flight from Shadows, you should go get it. Today, we're going to dive right in. Chapter 29, Bloodbinding, Cycle of Rio, Year 12, 182. And the earth stood still once more. Its heaving ceased, and the power that once was no more. Weep for the loss of that which is gone, yet still rejoice, for you have been chosen, and shall be blessed with the gifts of the earth, from which all life springs. Siparan Book of Dedication, Chapter 1, Verse 10. This is a terrible idea. You know that, don't you? Athandra asked from her perch on the bed. She sat with her legs bent in front of her, chin on knees. She watched as Tawara finished dressing. Tawara didn't respond to her inquiry. You are determined to do this? She queried again. Still, Tawara gave no response. It was exasperating. She couldn't just sit there. She had to do something before Tawara got herself in trouble, or worse. Fine, she huffed, throwing her legs off the bed and quickly untying the laces at the back of her dress. If you're going to do this, then I'm going with you. If you get caught and I'm not there, I'll be in just as much trouble as if I had been. Maybe more. She ignored the grin Tawara gave her as the princess slipped her other riding boot on and stood. Admit it, Tawara said, coming over to help Athandra with her laces. You are just as interested as I am in seeing the ceremony. Of course I'm interested, Athandra replied, but just because I'm interested in something doesn't mean I want to risk my life to witness it. What risk? Asked Tawara dismissively. You mean what the older man said about the apprentice having his head cut off if he messed up on the ceremony? I am fairly certain that does not apply to us. We are not in training in their religion. Athandra paused, letting her dress drop to the floor, and looked at Tawara intently. If their religious ceremonies are so important that they are willing to execute their apprentices for failure, what do you think they would be willing to do to someone caught spying on their sacred rituals? Nothing is going to happen, Athandra. We will not get caught, Tawara said, walking to the wardrobe to pull out Athandra's riding clothes and boots. I don't know why you insist on us wearing riding clothes, Athandra said, as she pulled her shift over her head and dropped it on the bed. If we do get caught, this will make us look even more suspicious. We need to be able to move freely and do so quietly. We may also have to move quickly. Wearing a dress is not conducive to any of those things. Besides, riding clothes are much more comfortable. She looked at herself in the mirror and placed her hands on her hips. And much more flattering, she added with a mischievous grin. Athandra rolled her eyes, throwing a pillow from the bed at Tawara. Tawara laughed in response, tossing the pillow on the bed and walking to the door. She opened it a crack, peering out. It is a good thing our room is the last one in this corridor, Tawara said, closing the door, as she turned back to Athandra. I do not think there is much risk of our being seen. Athandra tucked in her blouse as she made one more effort to avoid potential catastrophe. Are you sure you want to go through with this? We don't know what we'll find in the tunnels you found. They may not be empty this time. We will be fine, Athandra. No one going to the ceremony would go through the back way to get there. You don't know that, Athandra replied hopefully. No, but reason tells me that is the case. Now finish getting dressed. I want to get moving. Within minutes, Athandra found herself creeping down a narrow set of stairs behind Tawara as they made their way through the passageways Tawara had discovered on her adventure the day before. Tawara, I think we're going to run into someone, Athandra whispered nervously. Last time you said you had to carry a torch. There are torches lit in the sconces. Why would they be lit if no one is coming this way? It is okay, Athandra. Look at the amount of soot on the wall. These have been lit for hours. The ceremony should be starting soon. We are not going to run into anyone. Athandra huffed at Tawara, and they continued, creeping down the winding stairs. Tawara grinned over her shoulder in response, and she couldn't help but return the gesture, along with an eye roll. You see, Tawara asked in a haughty whisper, You are just as excited as I. What do you suppose will happen? I mean, blood binding. It is a type of magic or something, is it not? I mean, you do not really believe it has anything to do with their gods, do you? She gave Athandra a questioning glance. Athandra thought for a moment, trying to remember what she had read about blood binding. It can't be anything actually related to their religion, Athandra postulated. I did not read that much about it. I do not believe there is much of the old writing left on the subject, but what I have read was from records that are nearly 12,000 years old. From before the Cataclysm, the Separan religion has only been around for the last 2,500 years. Tuara looked at her quizzically. Well, maybe they discovered some of the old gods. Maybe they have it more correct than what we give them credit for. I doubt that, Athandra replied. Tuara shrugged as they reached the door at the bottom of the stairs. She swept her pinky in a good luck circle, then tested the handle gingerly. The door swung inward with a slight creak. Athandra cringed at the sound. Shh, she said, reaching toward the door. I cannot shush a door with squeaky hinges, Athandra, unless you brought some grease with you. Athandra dropped her reaching hands and glowered at the taller woman. Tuara grinned and pushed her playfully before peering around the edge of the door. The hallway is lit, just like the stairs, but it is empty. Tuara pulled the door open slowly. She winced at the continued noise, but it couldn't be helped. They crept down the length of the hallway, trying to walk softly. It was much easier said than done. Why in the world did we wear riding boots rather than slippers? Athandra asked, trying to tiptoe awkwardly. I know, Tuara replied in exasperation. This is my first time being involved in a clandestine endeavor. There's nothing we can do about it now. Athandra let out a nervous giggle, getting a shh from Tuara. They reached the curve in the hallway Tuara had described, and she slowed her pace even more. She inched her way forward, and Athandra followed her lead until a curtained doorway came into view. The curtain was dark, and Tuara paused to lean in close. Athandra watched anxiously. She could picture the curtain being flung back to reveal robed figures with blades drawn. They could be killed right below the palace and dropped down a well, or their bodies locked away in an old forgotten catacomb or cell, and no one would ever know. Tuara reached out abruptly and pushed the curtain aside. Athandra grabbed Tuara's arm, startled at the sudden movement. There's no one there, Tuara said confidently. She walked through the doorway and held the curtain for Athandra to follow. The room was not very large. It was round and had a low ceiling. Shelves lined the walls with bowls of pitchers, old books, pestles, mortars, and various other odds and ends. There was a brazier against the wall, opposite the door they had come through, and a stone altar sat in the middle of the room. This is where they must have practiced, Tuara said, placing her hand on the smooth altar surface. Likely, Athandra replied. Well, Tuara whispered, looking around. It is all unknown territory from here. Hopefully we do not come across any intersections. Tuara looked at Athandra with eyebrows raised. Last chance to turn back. We've come this far, Athandra replied, squaring her shoulders and grinning. You're not going to turn chicken now, are you? She really did want to know what was beyond this room. Tuara returned her grin. Not a chance. She turned and walked gingerly to the arched doorway on the far wall near the brazier. Athandra followed, and tried in vain to walk quietly as she quickly crossed the room. There was no door on this side either. Instead, another hallway curved away from the small room, this one lit with oil lamps and sconces. They had only gone a few paces when the hallway abruptly opened into a circular chamber with a high ceiling. 5 additional arched doorways were equally spaced around the perimeter. A bronze 8-pointed star blazed on the floor. A matching star blazed on the ceiling, reflecting lamplight from sconces set between each archway. They paused together, trying to hide in the doorway. Now what do we do? Athandra asked anxiously. Now we pick a direction, Tuara said, sounding less than confident. Pick a direction. Are you mad? How do we pick a direction? We could end up anywhere. I have an idea, Tuara said, leading out into the room. You wait here. I'll go through a doorway and see what is there. If it does not look promising, or there is a sign of people, I will come back. I will do that until a direction seems right. That is a terrible idea, Athandra said flatly. Do you have a better one? Well, no, but that doesn't change the fact that this is ludicrous. Well, I'm going on, Tuara said, stepping forward slowly. You wait here. Like hell, Athandra said, slipping out of the doorway to creep along with Tuara. Tuara grinned at her again. You keep grinning at me like that. It's beginning to make me nervous, Athandra whispered as they crept toward the first doorway. Tuara's grin widened, and she winked at Athondra as she passed through the first arched doorway. A hallway, similar to the one they had entered through, curved away from the chamber. They had gone only a few dozen paces when they came to a heavy wooden door, banded with iron. Tuara placed her ear to the door, closing her eyes tightly. She pulled away. I cannot hear anything. The handle was a large iron ring. Tuara pulled on it, gently at first, then with more force. I guess we will not be going this way, she said. Let us try the next one. They made their way back to the chamber. The next doorway was the same, a short curved hallway with an iron-banded locked door. The third door had the same short curved hallway on the other side. However, after the curve it opened into a well-lit passage with bronze sconces and tapestries on the wall. Just a minute, Tuara said, turning back and entering the chamber again. I want to see something. She quickly went through the last two doorways. Just as I thought, she said as she returned to the chamber. We only have one option. Hopefully it leads us to where we need to go. They went through the arched doorway once more, walking out into a brightly lit passageway. I think our chances of being spotted have significantly increased, Athondra said. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. So what if we get caught? Tuara replied. We have not done anything wrong. We are simply exploring the palace. Yes, through a secret chamber deep below the palace in an area that probably has some sort of religious sacredness, where we have trespassed and can now be killed for desecrating. Tuara simply rolled her eyes and continued to move forward down the hallway. There was an opening to the right up ahead. As they approached, Athondra could see a wide set of ascending marble stairs. Didn't you say the old man asked the apprentice to help him up the stairs? Yes, this is probably the way they went after they left the room. Tuara approached the stairs, staying close to the wall. She peered around the corner, glancing up. They go up a flight or two, then turn. I can't see what is at the top, she whispered. If anyone comes, there is no way we won't be seen, Athondra said, looking up and down the hallway. Even if we are not seen, they'll hear us for sure. Who was it again that said we should wear riding boots? Oh, hush up about the boots, Tuara said, elbowing Athondra in the ribs. I said that was a mistake already. She dropped to the floor. What are you doing? Athondra whispered fiercely. Solving the problem, Tuara replied, pulling her riding boots off. Well, if we are caught, that won't look suspicious at all, Athondra said sarcastically, joining Tuara on the floor to remove her own boots. They stood together, boots flung over shoulders, and began silently creeping up the stairs in stocking feet. They had only gone a few steps when they froze together. The sound of voices and footsteps were coming from above. Go back, Athondra whispered frantically, pushing Athondra back down the steps. Athondra stared in the direction they had come, but Tuara grabbed her. This way, she said, dragging Athondra further down the hallway. We will not make it back before they get down the stairs. The sound of footsteps and voices grew louder behind them. Several paces ahead, a side hall opened to the left. Tuara dashed into the side passage, and Athondra nearly dove to follow her. They flattened themselves against the wall, both panting in nervous anticipation. They're coming this way, Athondra whispered. We have to move. She pushed Tuara, and they sprinted the short length of hallway. It was about 10 paces long before it made a sharp bend to the right. They rounded the bend and nearly collided with a tall, armor-clad figure. Tuara gasped, stopping in mid-stride. Athondra collided with Tuara's back, and they tumbled to the floor, miraculously missing the figure in brightly gleaming bronze. Athondra scrambled across the floor, waiting for the figure to address them, but it stood still. She looked up at it, and had to stop a laugh from bursting out. It wasn't a person, but a suit of armor. It stood in the middle of a wide passageway. A marble archway rose above its head. On either side of the figure, dark runners ran along the floor, and mahogany panels lined the walls. Each panel was carved and etched with images and accented with gold flake. Athondra didn't take the time to observe the panels closely. The footsteps and voices appeared to be following them. I think we chose the wrong way, she said, jumping to her feet and dragging Tuara with her. They had no choice but to move forward. Beyond the arched doorway, there was a foyer of sorts. It had a high domed ceiling, again emblazoned with the 8-pointed bronze star. The mahogany panels decorated the walls with more elaborate carvings. On the far side of the foyer, thick burgundy curtains with gold fringe hung from the ceiling. The sound of soft chanting came from the other side of the heavy curtains. I think we found the ceremony, Tuara said, and a hint of panic in her voice. We came the wrong way, Athondra whispered frantically. What do we do now? She could hear the sounds in the hallway behind them, growing louder. She rushed forward, looking for an escape. She saw to the left, beside the heavy curtains, there was a small alcove. This way, she hissed, grabbing Tuara and pulling her along. The alcove had its own curtain at the back. Athandra brushed it aside and was relieved to find an empty passageway. She dragged Tuara through, pulling the curtain closed behind them. The passageway was lit, but not brightly. A single lamp lit the space above them. The hall continued on, curving back to the right. Some 10 paces away, another lamp sat in a sconce on the wall. I want to see, Tuara whispered, dropping to her belly. Athandra dropped down beside her. What if someone comes this way? We need to keep moving. There was a clamor of voices from the other side of the curtain. Athandra listened for a moment and realized it was chanting. She didn't recognize the language. Tuara had the bottom of the curtain pulled up slightly and was peering through. Athandra followed suit. She hoped no one would decide to come this direction. The voices came from a large procession of figures. They marched in double file past the bronze suit of armor, into the foyer, and through the now open gold-fringed burgundy curtains. They wore purple robes with wide golden stoles. Each wore an elaborate gold headpiece. Horns protruded from waves of golden braids. Golden wings swept down at the side of each face. Below the headpiece, the dark eyeliner and tattooed scrollwork of the Alkari Trade Guild was clearly visible. Around each of their necks hung a gold chain with the double square 8-pointed star of the Saparan priesthood. After several ranks of guild members the Alkari gladiators followed. They wore simple white togas, and each had a gold circlet resting on their heads. Additional Alkari followed the gladiators, followed by more of the trade guild in less elaborate robes. Tuara dropped her side of the curtain and scooted away before rising to her feet. Athandra followed her movements. Together they walked deeper into the passageway. Well? Athandra asked excitedly. I say we see where this passage leads. Maybe we will get lucky. Or we'll walk right out into the middle of the ceremony. Wouldn't that be hilarious? Tuara tittered and slapped her hand over her mouth, her eyes going wide. Athandra tried not to laugh. She was nervous and excited and felt like she might wet herself if anything startling happened. Shh, she whispered, feeling herself giggle and covering her own mouth. I should have used the lavatory before we came down here, Tuara whispered. Me too, Athandra whispered back as she danced a bit. She bit her lip to keep from laughing. We need to get out of here, Tuara whispered. She turned and made her way down the passageway. Athandra followed, slinking quietly in her stocking feet. The passageway continued, curving to the right some 20 paces, where it led to a set of spiraling stairs. They climbed the stairs, and Athandra silently prayed to any gods that there would be no one waiting for them when they reached the top. Tuara slowed, her head bobbing and swiveling. Athandra wanted to ask what Tuara was looking at. She dared not speak, instead craning to her neck to try to see past the princess-elect. The chanting had gotten progressively louder as they climbed. Tuara leaned back, whispering into Athandra's ear. There's a belfry. I can see the bells. There's a landing at the top of the stairs with a railing. There is no light up there, but there is light coming from the railing. I think that's where the ceremony is. We can crawl up to the railing and peer through. Maybe we'll be able to see something from there. Athandra shrugged and nodded, following as Tuara executed the plan. As they snaked their way up the railing, a small open chapel was visible. It had a high vaulted ceiling with crisscrossing arches that rested on fluted pillars running down either side of its length. On the ceiling, 6 bronze 8-pointed stars shone and reflected the candlelight from chandeliers that hung from the center of each star. The guild members sat in a semicircle on one side of the central altar. The Alkari stood on the other side of the altar, completing the circle. Tuara looked at Athandra with the same mischievous grin. Athandra grinned back and gave the princess-elect a wink. Tuara squeezed Athandra's arm and shook it excitedly before she turned back to peer through the railing. The chanting abruptly stopped, and a single figure rose from the semicircle of guild members and approached the altar. We gathered tonight to bind in blood that which was given from the earth, said a deep voice speaking Pachin. Given by the earth from which all life springs, came the chanted reply from those still sitting. We hold our duty sacred. Let none witness save those who have been sanctified by the gifts of the earth. Given from the earth from which all life springs, came the reply again. Let death fall upon any who are unworthy of the gifts of the earth. The two women glanced at each other knowingly at this. Tuara scrunched her face in mock consternation as the congregation chanted once again, Given by the earth from which all life springs. Is the servant prepared? At that, another figure stood and stepped up to the altar. He spake in a much weaker, older-sounding voice. "The servant of the earth is prepared." "Let the servant who is prepared come forth." A third figure rose and walked to the far side of the altar, opposite the older speaker. "Are you prepared to serve in dedication to that which comes from the earth?" A much younger, nervous-sounding voice replied, "I am prepared to serve. I dedicate myself to serve that which comes from the earth. May I bind in blood my service to the water, the sky, and the ground, all part of the earth, from which all life springs." "Given by the earth, from which all life springs," came the chanting reply once more. "Then let the servant's dedication begin. May his service be sanctified by the gifts of the earth, and may death fall upon him if he is unworthy to serve." "Let the servant be sanctified," came the chanting reply. The first figure who had spoken returned to his seat, and the two remaining turned to face each other over the altar. "Why do we use these stones?" the older voice inquired. "The stone is the earth, from which all life springs," said the younger voice. The younger figure leaned over the altar. He retrieved 3 small bowls from somewhere below the top and placed them on its surface. The two men spoke back and forth in a language Athandra did not understand. As they were speaking, Tuara leaned over and whispered into Athandra's ear, "This is what I heard from the other side of the curtain. That must be the master and the apprentice who were practicing in the room." Athandra remembered what Tuara had told her and nodded in response. She watched the younger speaker closely as he performed his tasks, silently cheering him on. She had no wish to see anyone's head cut off tonight. As the ceremony moved forward, Athandra considered how simplistic it actually was. There was a lot of chanting and specific phrases. Many of them were repeated by those sitting. However, the actions themselves were nothing special. The young apprentice poured water in the bowls. Each of the Alkari came forward and pricked a finger with a needle-looking blade. Guild members came forward and did the same. Then they each drank from the water with the blood that was mixed into it. They repeated the same ritual with the same chanting several times, once for the gladiator and again for the other Alkari, for a few other Alkari. She was a bit disappointed. She thought maybe there would be something more, maybe some visible change, but nothing happened. At the end, they all chanted together, "The water has been given from the earth. Blood of the Alkari child has been given. Blood of the servant has been given. The Alkari child and the servant are now bound in one, blessed by the gift of the earth, from which all life springs. The child is one, the servant is one. They both are one, bound in blood by the blessing of the earth, from which all life springs." The ceremony ended. The procession that had nearly caught them in the hallway left the chapel to accompany chants of the remaining attendees, who exited soon after. Athandra and Tuara stayed prone at the railing until well after everyone had left. They did not want to risk being spotted. Eventually an old man came in with a long pole and snuffed out the chandeliers. Lamp by lamp the room grew dim. Their perch above the chapel went dark. Athandra could hear the old man shuffling around. In a few minutes the meager light from the stairs winked out as well. In the silence of the chamber, Athandra dared not even sigh in frustration, for fear the sound might carry and warn the old man. It would be just their luck to make it through this whole ordeal, just to get caught by the person who shut everything down. She felt Tuara shift beside her. Then she spoke, still in a whisper. "We had better see if we can make our way back in the dark, I suppose. Hopefully we will come across at least one lamp still lit." They carefully crept back down the darkened stairs and through the passageway, groping the wall to find their way. They made it past the curtain and into the alcove, where the procession had passed by the suit of bronze armor. Athandra reached into the darkness. She could feel the shapes carved into the paneling as she carefully slipped forward. From behind, she heard a thud and a whispered curse from Tuara. "What?" she asked in exasperation. "I dropped one of my boots," Tuara whispered. "Well, pick it up. We can't leave it here." "I know that, Athandra. I just—" Her voice cut off, and there was a loud clang that made her heart leap into her throat. "What in the—" she began. "I think I hit the armor trying to find my boot," Tuara spat, her whisper harsh and annoyed. "Something must have fallen off, but I have my boot. We can—" "Is someone there?" came a voice from out in the darkness. It was a man's voice, old and raspy, speaking in high Pachin. Athandra didn't know what to do. She froze, waiting for a signal from Tuara, or some indication of where the voice had come from. It sounded distant, but could be coming from any direction. From deep in the darkness, a hint of light slipped down the passage ahead of her. She was past the armored figure and could see the light glint on the polished floor far from down the hallway. It was slowly glowing brighter. Someone was coming. We have to go, she whispered into the darkness. Where? Tora replied. I can't see anything. I don't know, Athandra retorted, but someone is coming. We have to hide. She slipped back the way she had come, feeling along the wall once more. They would need to get back into the passage. She didn't know where else to flee. They just needed to. She was jarred suddenly as she ran into Tawara, who apparently was moving in the opposite direction. She felt the other woman flail, mimicking her own movements. They stumbled together, and she felt something hard against her hand. A thunderous roar of metal rang out, echoing down the darkened hall. Athandra froze, feeling the prickling of 1,000 needles as her blood ran cold in her veins. What in the name of the goddess? Came a rasping old voice. The end of the alcove was suddenly illuminated by a dim light. The meager light flickered, shadows dancing on the walls, and in the darkness hints of light reflected off the crumpled shapes of bronze armor. The light began to grow bright, and the voice spake again. By Oda, what is... It spluttered, before calling from the passageway, Is someone there? It wasn't much, but the light was just enough to make out the dark shapes of the curtains. Tawara seized Athandra's arms and pulled her back in the way they had come. They slipped behind the curtain, and Tawara froze, still gripping Athandra's arm with one hand. Her other hand fumbled at Athandra's face, a finger nearly poking her in the eye. She tried to push the princess's hand away, but the other woman fought until her fingers found Athandra's lips, pressing firmly against them. Athandra understood. Still, she drew back from the pressure, pushing the princess's hand away, shaking her head. She rubbed her eyelid. That had hurt. If she hadn't had her eyes closed, at that precise moment, light suddenly peeked around the edges of the curtain, and they could hear the shuffling of feet, accompanied by muttering in a raspy voice. How in the world? Ridiculous! By the goddess! There were a few words Athandra did not recognize. They were clearly Hypatian. She assumed these must be curses she had not learned in her studies. The light reaching around the curtains shifted with the shuffling sounds. Athandra figured it was the old man who had put out the lights. He must have been making his way up the stairs when they experienced their mishap. It sounded as though he was alone. That made her feel a bit better, but they were still trapped. The light coming in on Tawara's side of the curtain suddenly grew brighter, followed by the curtain beginning to slowly be drawn back. Tawara flinched away, shifting close to Athandra as a small oil lamp was thrust through the opening. Athandra felt her heart race. What were they going to do? Before she could come up with a plan, Tawara leaned forward, blowing hard down the neck of the lamp. They were plunged into darkness once more, and once again Athandra felt Tawara yank her forward recklessly. Hold on to your boots, Tawara yelled, as they crashed through the curtain, plowing over the old man, who let out a dreadful yell as he crumpled to the floor, bringing the curtain down with him. I'm sorry, Athandra yelled as her feet stumbled over what felt like knobby legs. She nearly went down herself as Tawara continued forward, dragging Athandra with her. A cacophony of clanks and clangs echoed off the walls as the two stumbled through the pile of armor. Miraculously, she found herself still being pulled along. They slipped through the darkness, traveling only by feel through the main corridor and back toward the passage that would return them to the upper levels and to safety. They had reached the arched doorway that led to the chamber with the 6 doors when Athandra saw a dim light far down the hall they had just traversed. The old man must have relit his oil lamp. Luckily for them, he would not know which way they had gone, and she was sure he would not be able to catch them, even with his lamp. They groped their way forward, moving as quickly as they dared. The passageways were as dark as a cave. The only good thing was the lack of turns. There were curves and doorways to pass through, but the only real risk was in walking blindly into a wall. Neither one spoke. The old man might be slow, but who knew what his hearing was like? They were lucky in that the door that had locked behind Tawara on her first adventure did not lock this time. At last they reached the door at the top of the stairs that would let them into the hallway outside their room. Athandra let out a sigh of relief. I can't believe we just did that. I know, Tawara blurted out in an intense whisper. Do you think the old man is okay? I hope we did not break anything. Athandra started to giggle. I feel really bad, but I wish I could have seen his face when you crashed through the curtain. That is a terrible thing to say, Tawara retorted, but her words came out through her own laughter. We'd better get back to our rooms. We are not in the clear just yet. Athandra felt Tawara's hand grab hers and give it a playful squeeze. She was still giggling as the other woman opened the door. Bright light flooded through the opening, piercing the darkness and causing Athandra to flinch, her eyes squinting as they tried to adjust. They were about to enter the hallway when the door crashed fully open and rough hands seized them both. Ethondra was thrown into the hallway with such force that she was sent sprawling onto the floor. A knee was placed on her back, and voices shouted from further down the corridor. "Hold still if you want to live," said a voice above her as her hands were wrenched behind her back. She faced the wall and dared not raise her head to look about. Squeezing her eyes shut, she listened, hoping to glean what was happening to Tawara. She heard nothing from where she judged the princess-elect had fallen. The sounds of boots and the clang of metal, accompanied by raised voices, echoed from the far end of the hall.
All right.
The end, chapter 29. Almost the end of the book.
Almost. We're getting there.
So we're going to run out of book 1 before we can start reading book 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably.
Yeah. I think it's more than probably.
Yeah, it's a definite.
That's okay. We are still, our goal was have book 2 published by the end of December. Well, first it was September. Then it was the end of December, but we got to push it out a little bit because we're just not there yet on editing. We'll get there though. We'll keep making progress and make our way there.
Yep.
But jobs, stupid jobs. If I didn't have to work and have, get money and pay for utilities and bills and a mortgage and stuff like that, then I could just write and we'd have like 5 books done already. Same with you.
Yeah.
We didn't have to have jobs.
In a perfect world.
So I think we've said it before. If only we could think of some rich patron who is just looking for some way to spend their fortune to, allow some sort of progress in the world, we could be like, well, out of the good of our hearts, we'll let you support us so we can write.
I guess I could find a sugar mama cougar.
Hey, there you go. Yep. You just got to go on the hunt, Jared. You just got to go find the sugar mama.
Yeah.
Someday you'll find the sugar mama, and then she'll be like, "Oh, yeah, you definitely should just spend all your time writing, and Chris too. Here's a check."
Yeah. Yeah. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, not anytime in the near future. Hey, who knows? Maybe you'll get an email from, a Nigerian princess.
Yeah.
Someday. Because we got a lot of books still to write.
Yes.
So. But we're working on it. We're trying to shift some plans. We'll get to where we need to be. So today we were talking a little bit earlier, and I was thinking about we have the chapter where they sit down and there's the discussion about introduction to Alandar, like the more detailed introduction, and Lady Iskar talks about the training and everything. But in that chapter, they sit down and eat food. And I've read different books. People, authors and stories approach food in stories in different ways.
Yeah, most just kind of pass over, or at least in things I've read.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of fantasy. It's like they eat bread and cheese or dried meat and maybe some fruits. And like, that's about it.
A lot of wine.
Yeah. One food instance that I don't know why like in reality, they didn't have donuts and pastries or candy bars or anything, but it's in the first Lord of the Rings movie, the Fellowship movie, when they go, there's raining and they go into the town. They're with Aragorn and they're trying to find the place to stay.
It's been so long since.
They haven't met Aragorn yet, but it's raining. And the guy's like, "Hobbits, what are hobbits at the gate?" And they're like, "What business do you have?" And they're like, "Our business is our own." And then they go in and then they're making their way to, what is it, the Prancing Pony?
Yes.
So they're trying to get to the prancing pony, but along the way, they're coming across humans. And one of the first ones they come across is this guy walking through the street, and he's all, I would describe him in modern days as like either, he's the town drunk
Mm-hmm.
or a bum or something like that. But he's not walking down the street carrying a jug of wine or in modern days, a paper bag with something. He's got a great big carrot. And he looks all like, oh, like drunk looking at these hobbits. And then he's like eating, takes a bite of the carrot. And I'm like, where did he just has a carrot?
I guess the candy bar of the day, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe. Like, I've tried to think like, what else could he have? They could have given him a jug of something, like
Yeah.
a pewter jug that he's drinking out of,
Or maybe a meat pie or
any number of things. You're like, I don't know, because maybe he wasn't intended to be, the drunk vagrant, whatever. He's just a guy out on a rainy night, late at night, walking down the street, eating a carrot. Anyway, it just that scene I've always found every time it comes up. I'm like, so, here, take this carrot, and as they go past, take a bite out of it. But no, food and stories. Um, there's anytime I think of food in a story, I think of the movie Hook with Robin Williams,
mm-hmm.
and he's with the Lost Boys, and they open up all the pots and pans and everything. There's no food. He's like, "Where's the food?" And they're like, "Come on, Peter, play with us." And he's like, "I don't want to play. I want food."
Yeah.
And then it shows the food. He starts imagining, and then it shows the food.
Yeah.
And
it's all like,
so the Hook. I don't know what year Hook came out.
early 90s.
Yeah, early 90s. So I'm like, I was still a young teenager. But even then, I was like, that food looks like garbage.
looks like a mix between pudding and Play-Doh.
Yeah. Everything. I was like, what are they eating? Play-Doh? What are you imagining, Peter Pan? None of it looked appetizing at all.
Yeah.
The most appetizing thing was when the little fat kid made the invisible sandwich and is like, that looked more appetizing than all this other stuff that they put out on the table. I don't know. I guess kids play with Play-Doh. Kids eat glue.
Kids eat Play-Doh.
Kids eat Play-Doh. So maybe it's like, well, this is what... Who knows what kids are going to put in their mouth, and these are the Lost Boys. They're not teenagers, typically. They're pretty young. I don't know.
It was colorful.
It was very colorful, but not in an appealing way.
No.
Not in an appetizing, like, that looks good way. Although it did very much look like where I work, I've had there'll be international, they're expat people that come and trade off with different countries in different parts of the world for joint ventures and whatnot. And the location I used to work at, we had a lot of people from Korea that would come there. And one team in particular, every time they came and worked with my team, they would bring treats from Korea.
Yeah.
And it was like little boxes, it looked like gourmet, like little chocolates. You open it up and there's a little variety of things. They all look like that. They all look like they were made out of Play-Doh. So like maybe the person who created that scene in Hook was Korean.
Maybe.
Like, no, this is good food. This looks great. And I'm like, it looks like Play-Doh. But also your real food looks like Play-Doh too. At least the stuff you brought us to try.
Yeah.
They bring it every time. And every time I'd open it and be like, okay, what's it going to look like? I'm like, whoop, Play-Doh, more Play-Doh. Little Play-Doh squares, little round balls of Play-Doh. Like, I think maybe they're playing a joke on us, and it is actually Play-Doh. I don't know. It is funny to see those videos of like people that try different foods from, different parts of the world. And they're like, we're going to try this American whatever food. Or people from Australia are going to try this Korean food. That's fun.
I think the most interesting one I've seen lately, anyway, is British people eating American biscuits and gravy.
Yeah. That never gets old.
No, because they're like, oh, that looks terrible. And then they're like, this is amazing.
Yeah. Those teenage boys, especially.
Yeah.
Well, and there was one guy, he said he come to the US and he kept wanting to try American biscuits and gravy because he'd heard about it a lot and he never got to try it. So he went back to Britain and went back to I don't remember where he was. I don't know. I know England. I don't know what else is. Anyway, he went back and he's like, I messaged my friend and I was sad that I didn't ever get to try biscuits and gravy. And the place we were going to go try it, he got the recipe and is like, here's how to make this great biscuits and gravy. And I'm like, his looked better. I've made a lot of biscuits and gravy. I've eaten a lot of biscuits and gravy because I'm not trying it for the first time. And it's just as amazing every time if it's good.
Yeah, if it's good.
But what he made, I was like, man, what he made looked phenomenal. And he started with, like, I'll go buy like Jimmy Dean's breakfast sausage,
Mhm.
a roll of breakfast sausage, whatever. He started with, went and bought ground pork, and then he got all the proportions of the different seasonings to make it. Like the way he did it, I was like, he's going really from scratch here.
It's all out.
Yeah, all out. And it looked really good, but it was funny listening to him as he talked through it. Because he said, I've heard this from a couple different people from Great Britain who tried biscuits and gravy, where they're like, when they put it on, they're like, this looks like cat food or
Cat
dog
food,
food.
or I've even heard cat vomit.
Yeah. Like, it looks like vomit. Ooh. But while he's cooking it, he's like, oh my gosh, this smells amazing. And then he mixes it together and he's like, this looks terrible, but it smells so good. And then he made great big fluffy, like layered buttermilk biscuits. And he's like, we'd call these scones,
Mm-hmm.
like this is not what I would call a biscuit. And that's the same thing with the teenage
Yeah, they're
boys.
always like, this isn't biscuits.
Yeah. Like, no, that's not a biscuit. I don't know. To me, a scone is you take the dough and you fry it and it puffs up. That's how you make scones. It's kind of like a different dough that you would use than what you would use to make donuts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe donuts are a type of scone.
You got me.
I have no idea. Maybe. Who knows? But yeah, he made it. And then he's like, okay, I'm so anxious. And he tries it. And he's just like, oh my gosh. Oh, this is so good. It's so amazing. Yeah. It's really funny watching those reactions.
Another British one that they try of our stuff is Southern sweet tea.
Yes.
They really like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen the one kid, he's just like, and they're like, is that good? And he's just like shaking his head. And then he's like, oh, I drank it all. Could we refill this again? Yeah. I don't know. You drink enough sweet tea and you might become a diabetic.
Yeah.
Like really fast.
Yeah, I can see that. Because, I mean, we're kind of in the South. I mean, we're in a little bubble that claims the South. But you go down into South Carolina, Georgia.
Yeah.
That's some sweet, sweet tea.
Yeah. If you look at the sugar content, you're like, what? Well, it's kind of like people that there's a thing that I saw one time where someone said, I thought I really liked coffee. Turns out I like cream and sugar.
Yeah.
Yep, your coffee, like blonde coffee. I don't know about this.
Yeah, as a black coffee drinker, I I mean, I like cream and sugar, but I'd rather just have it black usually
Yeah.
because that's it. You're drinking, you might as well be drinking hot chocolate
Yeah.
with as much cream and sugar as a lot of people use. It's like you might as well just drink hot chocolate.
Yeah. We'll look at like an extra whip, double mocha, frappuccino, whatever
Yeah.
kind of drink. And you're
It's like
like,
the coffee was an afterthought.
yeah, I'm pretty sure you just had a shake with some coffee,
Yeah.
a little bit of coffee in it. You're mostly, you like shakes,
Hmm.
but
Yeah, McDonald's Frappuccino. It's just it's an adult shake. That's
yeah.
all it is.
So in stories though, I mean, what are there stories you've read or things you've come across where you really like where it talks about food? Are there any
Uh,
examples of that?
I don't know if I can think of anything that really stuck out as a benefit to the book.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of times where they'll describe an elaborate spread of
Yeah.
there was the turkey or game hens or this or that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't recall anything that really, other than showing the extravagance or the elaborance of what was going on.
Yeah.
Can't really think of anything that stands out as, oh well, that really enriched the story.
Yeah. Most of the story, I read a lot of fantasy. We talk a lot about fantasy fiction.
Yeah.
And the thing is with that, like the time period or the equivalent time period that would take place in is like medieval times.
Right.
And so they're like, we're going to go try this food and it's going to be really good. And I'm like, well, in our modern times, like I just ate at this buffet that had food from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about reality, um, well, Downton Abbey. So I like watching Downton Abbey, and the people part of the story is the people that are the staff that work in the kitchens and stuff. And there's one of the episodes where the people who live in the house in the main part are having this big party. Well, something happens with the party and guests aren't there or whatnot, and they have all this food left over. And so they bring the food downstairs, and the staff downstairs that are, the butlers and the doormen and the cooks and the maids and stuff, they usually have their own food. Well, now they're like, I guess we're gonna eat this food. And they have like lobster and shrimp and different stuff that's been brought in from somewhere. And like what they're talking about, I'm like, well, that's kind of fancy sounding stuff by today's standard,
Mm-hmm.
not just by that time period, but by today's standard, that sounds fancy. And the people down below were like, what is this? I don't even think I even want to try this. And one of the people says, I just wish I could have a good kidney pie. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So, perspective.
Yeah. This is not writing, but film. But one thing that stands out as food being the centerpiece of a scene
Mm-hmm.
kind of is in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. The
Yeah,
turkey.
the turkey.
I mean, it makes that whole scene
Yes.
where there's this beautiful looking turkey
Yeah.
and they cut into it and then there's
It's
just
it's
nothing
it's
there.
a inside of a tomb.
Yeah.
It's like a dusty tomb. And the best, like when Cousin Eddie's like, "Hey Clark, you want to put a little more there on me?" What he's like, "That's sure it's really good," or whatever
Yeah.
he said, And Clark's like, "What?" Yeah, writing food. So my sister Melissa and I talked about food and writing foods into books, and she really likes getting to experience whatever it is that the character is experiencing, but more than just we had stewed carrots
Mm-hmm.
But I guess you could probably write that in a way that what if somebody had never had carrots before? You know, depending on the world that you're creating, um, like realistically, how many people in in the 1400s that just if you go out among the general population, how many people do you think ate carrots on a regular basis?
Yeah, I don't know.
So,
Carrots maybe, but or potatoes definitely.
well, think about it.
But
So the Irish, Sir Walter Raleigh introduced potatoes to the Irish
mm-hmm.
after because potatoes are native to America, the Americas.
Right.
So they took potatoes, introduced them to the Irish, and then the Irish became dependent. You know, the Irish potato famine happened
Yeah.
thanks to Sir Walter Raleigh introducing potatoes to the Irish.
Yeah. They became completely dependent on them.
Yeah,
And they
because
still
but these
largely
grow
are.
really well there.
Yeah.
Well, what about before the potato famine?
Yeah. Well,
To be like mashed potatoes. What?
yeah. I don't even know what indigenous foods the Irish ate before.
Haggis? Where does that grow somewhere? I don't know. Like, people like it. Maybe I don't know. That's the other thing. Food that like some things are considered a delicacy,
Mm-hmm.
or when people say, "Well, it's an acquired taste," and I'm like, I think you have a mental handicap. I think that's what that means.
I don't know. There are things that are acquired tastes. I'm trying to. I know I've have things in my palate that I enjoy now that I didn't at one point.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what some of them
Well,
are
like
now.
the first time I ever tried oyster dressing. If you've never had have you had oyster dressing before?
I don't know. I've had oysters.
So it's oysters, but put into instead of making like
Oh wait, like
dressing for
yes,
Thanksgiving.
yes, I've had oyster dressing. Yeah,
So the first time when I had oyster dressing when I was young, I was like, "Whoa, what the heck is this?" And then I got a little bit older, and have my family, some people in my family really like oyster dressing. Well, I got a little bit older, and then I'm like, I don't think I remember liking this, but I'm gonna try it. And then I tried it, and I'm like, I kind of like this.
mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things I can eat so much of it, and then if I kind of get oyster dressing out really fast.
Yeah. There's a lot of things.
Where then
Yeah,
I'm like, I'll try a little bit more, and I'm like, ooh, this is terrible. How do I even like this?
yeah. Clam chowder is that way.
I don't know. I think I could eat a lot of clam chowder.
A good bowl of clam chowder is great, but to have it like multiple days is no.
Yeah, I guess that is one thing. Having stuff over and over and over and over again, I get burnt out really fast.
Yep.
Now, granted, when I get to the if I'm like I don't want to eat that, and then I wait, and like 2 hours later, then I'll be like, this is the best food ever. I love this because I'm so hungry. And then I
Yeah.
think about eating it the next day for lunch, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to eat that again. Tired of it
Yeah.
till I get really hungry that day, and then I'm like, anything, whatever. Yes, feed me this slop. It tastes amazing.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess this is a good episode to be talking about this since Thanksgiving is in 2 days.
Yeah,
Or no, it's tomorrow.
tomorrow. Yeah,
Yeah. So turkey, that's one that
like it for me. We eat turkey every Thanksgiving.
mm-hmm.
Have pretty much. I don't. There's probably like one or two Thanksgivings I haven't had turkey,
I don't know if I've ever not had turkey on Thanksgiving.
but I still have not made up my mind as to whether I actually really like turkey or not.
I like I like turkey legs. Like if you go to a fair or something,
Yeah,
those are good. I know they're kind of overrated, but they're still good. And I like white meat turkey sandwiches with mayo.
yeah. Uh, I don't know. I really like honey baked ham.
Mm-hmm.
The the bakery or cook honey baked ham. It's a restaurant and a bakery and whatever they do
Yeah.
catering whatever. So for Christmas, there's been a couple years where we got honey baked ham gift cards
Yeah.
for Christmas. And I went and bought the turkey breast. And I'm like, I really liked that. It's also probably like almost as much sugar as Southern sweet tea
Yeah.
is in the glaze. So
Yeah. Ham's a
there
good
might
one
be
though.
something to that.
I'm I'm real picky on ham.
I am
I
too.
don't know why. A
I
good ham, oh, I love it. A
Yeah.
cheap ham, not a fan.
I think it for me, I don't think I think it's the way it's cooked. I don't if it's chewy at all, if there's like veiny fat in it that doesn't get rendered
Yeah.
out, anything like that, I'm just like, "Ugh, I don't want this. Oh, maybe not that bad, but yeah, I'm really picky.
And processed ham, ugh. You
What
know, like
about spam?
I like spam. I don't mean like that process. I mean
Yeah.
like, the ones where
In the
it says
middle, like
contains
spam is like
water and
really, really
yeah, spam isn't ham anymore. It's something
It's
else.
like a pasteurized processed cheese product
Yeah,
from a meat
pretty
perspective.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know how much room we have to talk when it comes to what's good or bad because we've had some really weird food inventions over the years. When it
Yes.
comes to creativity, we've gone really out on some creative limbs
Yeah.
with food.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe so the instance I'm thinking of probably. We were at my house. I don't know how we're teenagers. Maybe it was because it was the middle of the night. Maybe it was because we were teenagers, probably a combination of them. But we went and we'd gone to town, drove in late at night, went in, the store was still open. It's like late. By late, I mean like it was like 11 o'clock when we got there,
that's
just
back when
before
stuff was still 24 hours.
yeah,
Actually, stuff was
it
newly
was newly
24
24
hours.
hours. So we went and we got like a couple of meat and cheese trays that have like the Dijon mustard and sliced meat and different cheeses and stuff. And we got an entire gallon can of black olives.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got like 4 varieties of easy cheese. And we got a package of Walmart dozen glazed donuts. And we got some other stuff. I think we got some shrimp and some, because we usually would fall back on shrimp a lot.
Yeah.
I think we got shrimp and the cocktail sauce.
Maybe some fancier, not by fancy, I mean what you find at
Fancy for when you're a teenager and you
Yeah.
have a little bit of spending money.
Yeah.
And you're like, we're buying food. Like, we're going to get some Gouda,
Yeah.
But we got all this stuff for the 2 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then that night, we ate all of the meat and cheese trays. We ate the entire gallon of black olives. Yep. We ate, like, we ran out of crackers and cheese and sliced meat. So we were taking black olives and be like, hey, if you put the spout right in this black olive and you can fill it with easy cheese. And then you get like it's like an olive and cheese bonbon.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or whatever. And then at one point, all we had left were donuts. And, we'd eaten most of the box of donuts. We'd eaten some of the box of donuts. We still had donuts left. And then we started. I don't remember who came up with the idea.
I'm guessing it was you.
Maybe. I don't know. But we decided, what if we take the donuts and we have the sauces from the trays? We try it in like the cocktail sauce. What does a donut dipped in cocktail sauce taste like? What does a donut dipped in Dijon mustard taste like? And surprising, like I haven't tried it since then, but I remember we finished off the box of donuts by dipping the glazed donuts in Dijon.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe there was something wrong with us at the time.
I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm sad or glad that I have no memory of the Dijon and donut.
Yeah.
But
I do not remember the taste whatsoever, but I remember we tried it and we're both like, oh yeah, how does this taste good? Like, I think because at this point it was like 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah, we burned our taste buds out.
Yeah, something. But we finished off the rest of the box of glazed donuts being like, oh, I'm going to eat some more of this. I'm going to eat some more of this. Just, I don't know how. I don't know why.
And just in case anyone's wondering, there was no marijuana involved.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing.
This wasn't a munchies thing. It was
I could see it, you know, if that's the path we went down. We weren't.
No, we were just crazy.
Yeah. What if we had been?
Oh, there's no
Throw that in the middle. Who knows what would have happened? Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do to get creative with food. I don't know that you should do everything you could do to get creative with food. But from a story perspective, one thing I'll say, food in cartoons always looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
When Donald Duck has his stack of pancakes and he gets the honey and he pours it over the top, like he goes right out to the hive and he's like fighting with the bees or whatever, finally gets his honey and he pours it, and I'm like, that's like the best looking pancakes with, like, it's honey, but I would think syrup.
Yeah.
How do they look so good? When somebody in a cartoon is eating a turkey leg or a chicken leg, like, it looks the best. That's like, maybe that's what food is like in heaven, what we picture in cartoons.
Maybe. Yeah, turning it back to writing, I think, like when we did with our last chapter, and if you missed it, last episode, we talked about food.
Yeah.
I think it really enriches that scene.
Mm-hmm.
We don't go into a lot of detail about what exactly they're eating, except for the fish.
Yeah.
But just the fact that they're eating, and it's an experience.
Yeah.
That Tuara hasn't experienced before. I think it enriched the scene a little bit anyway.
I think so. And I think part of that is you and I, and a couple of some friends and family that are in our kind of closer circle, that's how we like food. I mean, I like just food, I like to eat good food no matter what. But I like to experience food. And like I would love to, what we described in that scene, I want to go to a restaurant that's like that.
Yeah.
To be like 34 courses. But they're all like tiny little courses of some new wonderful food that when I'm done, I'll be like, oh, I want more of that. It was so good. And then the next thing's like, oh, but this is really good. And I also want more of this. 34 times in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because as much as, again, Thanksgiving tomorrow, people are like, oh, I'm going to feast and eat. I'm like, yeah, I really like deviled eggs. Well, deviled eggs may not be a good example because I could probably eat like 30 of them before I'm like, okay, I'm sick of deviled eggs. But you make one big plate with potatoes and gravy and dressing and whatever, and then you're like, sometimes I'll be part of the way through that plate and be like,
I'm tired of this.
It's just going to be the same taste over and over and over again.
Yep.
So over time, I've learned I get very small. I get a lot of portions of different things, very small portions, so that I can do what Tuara did in that scene. Be like, this is my 34 courses. But granted, with every course, it's a little bit of this and deviled eggs, and a little bit of this and deviled eggs, and a little bit of this and ham roll ups. Those two.
I saw a thing. I think it was on TikTok. They, they've got the boiled eggs, and the guy's commenting. He's like, he's watching the video, and you're watching his video, and he's like, "What are they doing there?" And they dip them in batter.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What's going on here?" And then they say deep fry them. He's like, "Is this gonna be?" And then they put the devil egg stuff in there, and he's like, "Oh my gosh!"
Yes. Yeah, they batter and fry the white part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that. I think it's probably the same. I mean, there's probably multiple versions of it, but I've seen that too. And yes, it looks amazeballs.
It does, yes.
I haven't tried it, but it does look amazing. I mean, it would be like if you've had a Scotch egg, where it's the deep fried, it would be like that on crack.
I've not had a Scotch egg.
I would imagine.
I'm not sure what that is.
It's It's I don't remember what all the layers are. There's a couple layers, but it's like fried and then battered again and fried. But it's a whole hard-boiled egg.
Okay.
I don't remember. I don't know what else happens to it, but you cut it open and it's layers of deep fried stuff with egg and the hard-boiled egg in the middle.
Sounds good.
But I think the deep fried deviled egg thing sounds really good. I mean, you put it all together. I could be like deviled egg, ham roll up, slice of Gouda, some olives, something, and just be like, shove it all in at the same time. And be like the little mouse in Ratatouille. Like, oh, it's a party, symphony in my mouth, all the different things. Or I'm insane.
Maybe.
One of them. Who knows? So, anyways, yeah, I think food can. I'm still. I think the jury's still out for me. I think it depends on the writing style and what the focus is as to whether or not the food in the story just is there so you get the reality, or it's there so you have you experience something through the character's eyes, or it's just kind of mundane and you're just talking about food.
Yeah.
And I've read each of those scenarios.
I think all of those scenarios can add to writing.
Yeah.
If you want to show this is mundane, they're having bread and hard cheese day after day if they're on a trip or whatever. So it can add to the okay, this is mundane, obviously.
Yeah.
Or it can add to, like with ours, with Toara, this is a new experience for her that she's never gone through before.
Yeah.
Or, it can show the lavishness of a courtly party or whatever.
Yeah. I agree.
But it can also drag down, it can bog things down too.
So I would say look at art. For how many years was painting a bowl of fruit the thing to do?
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on the house that you go into and who painted that bowl of fruit, there are some bowls of fruit that you're like, wow, that's a really good painting of a bowl of fruit. And it really enhances. And it's a good picture for in this room. And then some, you go in and you're like, holy jeez, what is that? Why is that on your wall? Same thing with writing.
Yeah.
But looking around at the world around us, how many people have like a bowl of wax fruit on their table? Or fake fruit? I mean, there's a pumpkin on the shelf behind you right now.
Yes, there is.
So there's food all over in art. I guess if you do it right, do the food in your writing. Just make sure it enhances. Experience the food. And then it'll probably work.
All right.
So, write about food or just go eat food and make it good. Okay? Till next time, go in good spirits. Thanks for listening to the Creators Guild podcast. Don't forget to get your copy of A Flight from Shadows, available on Amazon. While you're there, please rate it and give it a review. If you like the Creators Guild, please like and subscribe, and make sure to share it with your friends. Until next time, go in good spirits.